meeting of Tuesday the 9th of September. A reminder to everyone that the meeting will be recorded and subsequently available for public listening at a future date. Can we look at item number 1? Do we have any apologies?
Chairman, apologies from Councillors Dick and Nicholson, and we're missing Councillors McClung and Carson.
I think Councillor Carson won't be here. He may get here, but he's got a head problem.
There are 15 members present at the start, and I would just point out there was no visuals today, only sound and recording.
Right, well, you start sleeping at the back, I'll still see you. Okay, item number 2, do we have any declarations of interest? Patsy?
It's just with the Visit Scotland item 7, the Wickham Festival is mentioned, but it has, I don't think there's any effect on me staying in for the meeting. Okay. It's on page 117.
Thanks for that. Any other declarations? Okay, can we turn to item number 3, the minute of the committee meeting of the 8th of July? Members happy to agree that is an accurate minute? Okay. Jack?
Microphone.
Try that, Jack.
Sorry? Can't get the equipment. Item 7 on the previous minutes, the Burn statue. I'm sure at the end of the meeting when we spoke about the well that was found, we had a nod and agreement from everyone that we would, the local members would have a look at the site to the view of putting a glass top in it and a bulb. That's my recollection of that.
I certainly don't remember the part about local members. I probably would have remembered that being one of them. But what I do recall is that when you raised the issue, Jason said at the end, and I think if you listen to the transcript, Jason said at the end, we'll look at that. So obviously that was an operational commitment from Jason to look at that. So I'm sure we'll get something brought back around that particular item. There was certainly no agreement from members as such, but Jason certainly gave a commitment to have a look at that and look at the potential options around the well. I think what was crucial was that I think there was suggestion during the course of the discussion that there was a substantial underspend in the project, but actually what the report covered was the end of the financial year. So although there was an underspend, that was simply because the money hadn't been spent in that financial year because the project was continuing into the current financial year. So we'd obviously, in any project being taken forward, we need to get an idea of where the funding would come from as well, basically. But I don't see anything wrong with bringing forward a proposal. I think members would be quite happy with that. If you want, I think that's a good idea. If you want to bring it up under the actual capital report, just so we can get clarification on that, and any suggestions, we can discuss it then. Yeah. Maybe I'll have a microphone working by then, Jack. Okay, but are members happy to agree the word in the minute before you? Okay, thanks very much. Okay, can we turn to item number 5, which is the revenue monitoring report? Sorry, item number 4, the minute of the House and Subcommittee meeting of the 11th of July. Are members happy to agree that is a true record? Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, item number 5, the revenue monitoring report. Could I ask the Director if he has anything he wishes to add to the report before us?
Thank you, Chair, and a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing to add to this report at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, can I open up to members? Any questions? Okay, Ian, Alistair, after that.
Thanks, Chairman. Sorry, I missed that with confusion with the mics. We're on item 6. 5,
item
sorry,
5,
no, I'll just congratulate, sorry I missed that. Just was saying, we got confused with the mics here. Congratulations on item 5, I think that the fact we're returning a balanced budget.
Okay, thanks, Alistair. Sorry, Alistair.
Thanks very much, Chair. Well, I wouldn't quite get too carried away at this moment in time because at the end of the day, we're saying measures to be identified. In other words, we're still looking for just shy of £129,000. I must confess, Chair, that this is something of a new departure as far as I'm concerned. You know, we say we're going to break even, but in the body of the report, we're saying that, you know, we've still got to identify, you know, the sort of the savings measures for £129,000. Now, I will appreciate this particular service's track record, Chair, and managing its budget, and I would commend them for that. But as I say, just slightly disconcerted that, you know, we're approving something this morning, and there's a fair old swatch of savings still to be found, at least in my perspective.
Yes, Councillor Geddes is absolutely right. I think if you look at the table under 3.1, there is an item that says measures to be identified, and what we're flagging up there to members is that we do have an issue within the account to the tune of £129,000. At this time last year, that figure was 140,000, and we did return a budget minus 22,000. So I am confident that we'll be able to deal with this. This is the new way that, an amended way to actually present our finances, and it's basically giving members information of how the account is running and what measures we have to take to ensure a balanced outturn. And we've already spoken as a management team to draw our belts in and use our best financial management to ensure a balanced return.
Do you want to go back, Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. I'm grateful for the comments.
Okay, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. With reference to 3.4, I mean, it tells us that because of the economic downturn that there's going to be the undercovery in the planning and building warrant fees, and that would obviously compensate, I suppose, the 129,000 that were a shortfall. My question would be, I'd like to know that because there's been such a high number of retrospective applications put in, especially from DGHP over the past 12 months at least that we're aware of, we see it constantly coming through the application process. Is there a different fee for retrospective applications, or is it the same as a normal application going in? And therefore, if it is the same, is there not a possibility to charge extra for retrospective because they've already carried out the work, and therefore that might help balance the budget within this department?
Okay, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Peacock. I'll have to respond to you separately on that matter. It's a technical term that I'm not prepared to answer without getting advice on it. We have had these applications. They're taken into account in the overall assessment of our income going forward. The good news is that planning fees are increasing and coming back up to original levels, so that's another optimistic outlook for the future. But I'll come back to you personally on that matter and copy the rest of the members in.
Brian.
Use your microphone, please.
In respect of Mr. Speedy's response, he said that planning fees were increasing. Did he actually mean planning applications, just for clarity? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Absolutely correct. I should make that quite clear. It's the fees being accrued from increased applications that are increasing, not the fee level. Thank you.
Okay, any other members? Graham, did you want in yet? No. Okay, I'm just preempting it. Okay. Okay, can we turn to the recommendation? Members happy to note 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, can we turn to item number 6? This is obviously the capital report, and we have a team of people getting in place as we speak. We've got Ewan Green, we've got Harry Thompson, James MacLeod, Charles Clemmy and Sheena Trail. So plenty of people to answer any questions that members have. Can I ask the Director, first of all, though, is there anything he wishes to add to the report before us?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open up to members? Graham?
Thank you, Chair. 3.12, page 21. It refers to the meeting of the Wigton Area Committee in July. Overall progress and delivery of Stranraer waterfront projects was reported to the Wigton Area Committee at its meeting on 2nd of July 2014. The redesign of the slipway and inclusion of a boat hoist was detailed in the report, and the committee did not raise any issues to be referred to this committee in relation to the slipway and other projects. That is not an entirely true picture. Concerns were expressed, although perhaps not articulated, that they come to this committee over the location of the hoist, the possible future dredging. There was quite a bit. I'm putting the marker down for next month's meeting, and I'm looking at you, and when I'm saying it, in simple terms, everything wasn't rosy and hunky-dory in the garden. They may not have singled out concerns to come to this committee, but presumably a more fulsome paper will come up in October, and that will be the chance to relay the concerns of Wigton Area Committee, which there were.
Do you want to answer that, Ewan?
Yes, as we flag up in the report, we'll bring it back on the 2nd of October here. A full detailed report of the outcome of the process, the tendering, and information on the operations side of it as well.
Could I just come back, Chair? But you would accept that 3.112 is not entirely accurate, or could be deemed as giving slightly the wrong impression?
Certainly the minute doesn't show any specific comments. I think the report did say...
The minute doesn't, but there was even a motion put forward to delay the project, albeit an unsuccessful. And so everything, it wasn't the case that the paper was presented to Wigton Area Committee and everybody gladly accepted it and welcomed it with open arms. There were concerns expressed, and I'm just putting that in its context with what's in the paper here. No doubt other members who were at the Wigton Area Committee could confirm or deny this, but that's my recollection of the meeting.
And if any member wants to raise it when we get the report in October, they're obviously open to do so. Yeah. Alistair and then Jack.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. It's my comments are it's page 75 of 392, and it's it's the infrastructure asset class agreed and proposed programme project locations. So Windsor in relation to Windsor Road, York Drive, Newton Stewart. Can I say, Chair, that I have concerns about the process that we appear to adopt in relation to such schemes, and I know that these concerns are shared by Cree Valley Community Council. Both the Community Council and myself are totally supportive of the concept of the project. No argument whatsoever about that. But the worry is that my understanding is that it might not in fact be possible to bring this project to fruition because of difficulties with at least one of the landowners. And my comment, Chair, would be surely it would make more sense, you know, to get issues like that resolved at the time or before we start down this route of making applications for funding and match funding. Because otherwise there's a very real danger, Chair, of tying up resources and projects such as this, which are not capable of being utilised and could in fact be utilised elsewhere. So I'm not trying to sort of look the gift horse in the mouth. What I'm saying is that, you know, if we did this in a different fashion, you know, it would seem to me that, you know, you've got the landowner's consent and things like that tidied up before, you know, you're committing the resources, and therefore you know you're going to be able to proceed. Whereas, as I say, my worry, and I've already had this out with a member of Mr. Speedy's staff concerned, I'll be diplomatic and put it that way, and I don't think, in fact, I'm sure that, you know, my arguments, you know, did not, you know, were not persuasive. But I think it's one, sir, that we've really got to look at for the future, because, as I say, otherwise, you know, you can allocate resources, tie up resources, and the scheme might never come to fruition on the basis that you can't get agreement with the landowners. And if that had been identified right at the start, you wouldn't find ourselves in this position.
It's a valid point, because there's obviously been projects in the past that I mean, I can remember one in my own ward that didn't go forward for that very reason. So it's certainly something that I think officers can have a look at. Okay, Jack, and then Graham, and then Dennis, and then Ian.
Thank you. I'll come back again to the the well at Burn Statue. We're talking about promoting Dumfries. Now, I'd asked Alistair at our meeting a couple of weeks ago, did he know why the fountain was at the other end? And I'll just remind them what the answer was. My answer was, that was to commemorate running water coming after the cholera epidemic in 1832. Now, there's a wee tourist trail there. Now, we have this well at Burn Statue with a glass cover on it. We have the other well in Queensbury Square. That's a wee bit of a tourist trail. We're trying to bring people into the town. So can we have agreement that we bring this back in, Colin?
You've got the benefit of being there at the time they built it, Jack. I think that's way before my time, but I think the commitment's there to have a look at that. I think that's a valid point. I'm not entirely sure we should sell Dumfries as the place where cholera outbreak happened, but certainly worth highlighting these things. What was remarkable at the well when it was opened up during the works is the remarkable condition it was in. I wonder who the contractor was there. We could maybe get them in to do the next piece of work for the council. But certainly there's a commitment there to look at that, absolutely.
If they want to know about cholera, just walk along St Michael's and you'll see outside the cemetery the amount of bodies that's in there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And in Bain Loaning off Lockerbie Road.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Graham and then Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. Page 59 of 392. It's relating to SNR flood prevention scheme. Options for progressing work items 4 and 6. It's basically just clarification. I've raised this before, and the director did say it would come back in the September meeting, and lo and behold, here it is. In simple terms, so that I can get my head round it, most of the work has been done bar 2 particular pieces that could be subject to compulsory purchase orders or enforcement. Is that correct? And will we, and are we prepared to go down that route?
The Flood Risk Management Act doesn't require us to use compulsory purchase orders, which would be a much more time-consuming process. We can use the powers within the Act and not acquire the land, and we would prefer to take that route. But the effects are somewhat similar. We have powers over the land to construct and to use the land to store flood water, particularly the area to the south of the railway crossing that you're aware of. Around the town for work item 4, above Oxford Way, there's no requirement to acquire any land there, just access to construct. It'll just be a diversion of runoff. But because the water from that outfalls into the Black Stank, Graham, there needs to be an agreement with all landowners downstream because of the change in flow patterns. And we know that the landowner downstream on work item 6, sorry for any of you that aren't particularly aware of this location, is the area where we're still in negotiations with land access to construct that. So we have a plan of attack. It's the resources to do that. That's, as you can see from the report, that's our challenge at present.
If I could just come back, Chair, because I couldn't argue with what I was told, but are we, as a council, prepared to do what is necessary to complete SNR flood prevention scheme? I mean, there is a landowner who's not wanting to cooperate. I'm sure we both know exactly who it is, and he's got the 2 pieces of land. This is, in theory, holding up the whole completion of the project. So we don't need to use compulsory purchase. We have other powers, as from what I understood, what you told me. Are we prepared to use them to get the thing finished next year?
I mean, certainly it's powers we would be using for other flood protection schemes that we will progress over the next few years. So yes, that option is certainly available. I mean, as the report alludes, we are, due to the nature of the culverts leaving the site under the railway, the town is effectively protected as much as it would be by any scheme at present. So at present, there is no risk to the town from the town burn, any more so than there will be once the scheme's built. But it's a very informal arrangement at present, and we have no specific control over it. But nothing's changed in the last 10 years.
You said even if it was done, it wouldn't make any difference at present. The town is at no risk, and even if that work was carried out, it wouldn't affect the outcome anyway. So Stranraer won't flood as it is at the moment. There is no risk.
Of course not. There is some risk. What the point I'm making is that the area to the south of the railway, where we're using land, where we're proposing to use land to store floodwater, currently stores floodwater because there's a lack of capacity in the culverts that take that water through the town, particularly under the railway crossing. What we are trying to agree is to have some control over that, in as much as it relies on the fact that the culverts are almost collapsed to hold back the water. If we're not in control of those culverts, they're under Network Rail property. If they chose to remove or repair those culverts, then we lose the storage upstream as a consequence. So what we're looking to do is formalise that. Now, Network Rail have no plans to do anything with those culverts, so at present the risk is as it has been, and in future when we do the works, we will not be improving that situation. What we're doing is preventing the option for the risk to be made worse, the likelihood of flooding to be made worse.
Okay, Dennis.
Thanks, Chair. It's Appendix 9, page 65, and the first one's just a correction. It's the U255A, Langham Bridge to Buccleuch Estates Office. I'm afraid if we repair that, we're going to be doing 300 yards of the A7. So it needs to be the Sawmill Bridge at the Kiln Green to the Buccleuch Estates Office, because otherwise, as I say, we're running along the A7 through the centre of Langham. So if that could just be corrected. The other one is further up a little bit. It's Springfield Village. And while I'm delighted to finally see this here, I'm a little concerned that it's February, March. Because I've got to say, since the ward system for councillors came in, Councillor Driver and myself in the beginning with the other two councillors have visited Springfield Village so many times, and the streets and the roads there, and the state they're in. And since the last election, along with Councillor Peacock and Councillor Crothers, we've done the same. And we've had officers out there, must be 7, 8, 9, 10 times in the last 6 or 7 years, looking at the state of these streets. And I'm concerned that, delighted while this is finally here, but concerned that if we go through another winter with the state of these roads, the same problems of people literally being drowned by cars passing, wheels being broken in potholes, will continue. And one of the roads goes by the playing field, and the playing field is waiting for a drainage system, and that drainage system cannot go in until that road is done. And I'm taking that within Springfield Village we're meaning to do all the roads, so I really would like to see a report on exactly what we are going to do in Springfield Village, and I would ask if there's any way at all it can be brought forward before winter starts, then it would be greatly appreciated by the people that live there and the Community Council, who keep getting this in the neck every month. Thanks, Chair.
Charles, do you want to come back on that point?
Yeah, I take the point on board about the first road and the description. In fact, I think we have actually looked at that road together, so I know where that is. As far as the Springfield resurfacing works are concerned, so long as there's no other governing factor that is dictating that it's done in February, I don't know if there's any other work in conjunction with that. It may be coordinated to suit something else, but if that is not the case, I will do what I can to bring that forward. And I'll advise you accordingly of all the other schemes and the proposals for Springfield as a whole.
I was going to say thanks, Chair, because I think the Community Council really needs to know on this one, because we've had site visits, we've had ward tours, and I say the same problems come up constantly there. And so far we have not had the full report that says, well, it says now when it's going to be done, but why and what. So they need really to know exactly what we are going to do there.
Okay, can I bring Ian in?
Thanks, Chairman. 2 or 3 items. First one's for Ewan. Page 27 is the Economic Development Capital Programme for 2014-15. Just in regards to that, and I'll put it into context, in the next item, Visit Scotland, item number 7, on paragraph 3.9, there's a gearing, when what we're being asked for is put money in, we get a gearing of 14 to 1, a ratio coming back, so we invest £240,000 in Visit Scotland, we get £3 million back nearly in return. So what I'm looking for Appendix 1 is clarity on that. This is economic development, so this is about creation of jobs and so on and so forth. So what is the return we actually get in regards to the amount of money we're putting in here? See, it's nearly £2.8 million or just over. So how many jobs are being created for that in particular, full-time equivalents, that type of thing. Appendix 9 for Charles, and on Appendix 9, page 65 to page 75, just the detailed costing, if we can get that out with the committee, the detailed cost for each job as it goes forward, please, if that's possible, just for the sake of scrutiny. And just for the sake of what Jack brought up with a minute earlier, I wonder if we could revisit at the very end so we're absolutely clear the decision that's been made in regards to Burn statute before we leave it. That's the 3 points, please, Chairman.
Ewan, do you want to come in?
ROI and capital investment here is not something we've ever measured before or brought back to you. There are certainly national standards that we can apply, like multipliers that we can apply to say that for every pound spent, X number of pounds comes back into the economy. And we can have a look at that on the overall programme. Some of the schemes are about placemaking. Burn statute is a good example of that. Strategic investment around place and around the tourism value of the statue, for example. Some of the other projects, at Dock Park, for example, we can clearly see an increase in user numbers. We can clearly see that being a really strong tourism attraction and an attraction for the local community. So a lot of this is, I suppose, anecdotal from that point of view. But I can definitely do a bit of work that lets you, that I suppose puts this in a national context around ROI in general from capital, because we can do a multiplier that says how many jobs are created, for example, in general of the spend, something like that. It would be quite a high level piece of work, but I can certainly do something around that.
I suppose, Chairman, in fact, I mean, delighted if we see that coming back, delighted to see then we can actually compare apples with apples, pears with pears, so to speak, as we go forward, especially as we go forward towards the budget process, as we do go head towards there. I mean, I don't know if the actual, I mean, in the back of my mind, I've got a feeling that maybe this needs to be recategorised, because we are putting in infrastructure. This is as much an infrastructure programme of works as what it is. Economic development relates in my mind to creating jobs, creating wealth for Dumfries and Galloway, and attracting people to this area, whether it's people, visitors, or whether it's business in general. So maybe it's just my understanding how I'm looking at this. I mean, the longer I've been in council, the more I start to look at economic development in that way. This is about creating wealth within Dumfries and Galloway. And just in regards to Appendix 9, if I can get reassurance, Chairman, for Charles, we can get that detailed information for each job, how much it's costing, away for the committee, obviously. And for yourself, Chairman, just when we come back to the recommendations, how we actually bottom down the points that Jack's made, please.
Charles, do you want to come in on the point around the funding of the roads?
Yeah, just to confirm that there will be, once the schemes are completed, there will be a full list of schemes in accordance with the costs that covered as well. So that will be provided. As you'd imagine, as we go through the year, there's a bit of fluctuation, there's a bit of give and take. So, to put that in every single report is quite demanding. But at the end of the day, there will be an outturn report that lists all the schemes, the details and the costs, if that's acceptable.
That's fine. Ian, do you want to come back in?
No, I understand totally what Charles is saying in regards to the end of the year report, but it's as much just to keep myself up to speed, so I've got an understanding. If any other members are looking for that, I would imagine they can just pick up on that email as well. But just to get an understanding as it rolls forward, Charles, and we can see, rather than getting it in quarterly or every 6 months, it's just to keep an understanding how the projects are moving forward. And the actual spend in each area as well. It's how much money is getting spent in Wigtownshire compared to Arndale and Eskdale. It's just to keep on top of that as the year runs on.
Chair, that I do have that detail available, and I will provide that detail.
Okay, thanks very much, Charles. Okay, George.
Thanks, Chair. I'm pleased to see on page 69 that at last we're going to be doing something with the 713 at Allen Gibbon Bridge, which has been a source of problems for quite a number of years with lorries. The camber never seemed to be right in it somewhere or other. I'm also concerned now about another fatal accident which happened about 3 miles north of that, at a series of bad corners on that road, and I'm just wondering if we're going to be looking into maybe putting signage up or extra signage. I know we put signage up after the last fatal, which was 2 or 3 years ago, or a couple of years ago, and we had another motorbike just 2 weeks ago. I'm wondering if we're in conjunction with the police maybe going to try and control the speed on these series of bad bends.
Yeah, Chair, I can confirm that officers from my service have actually met with the police as part of the ongoing fatal accident inquiry. And I think it would probably be wrong at this time to discuss that and the outcome of that fatal accident inquiry. There was indeed an accident there previously, and some 10 years ago. Insofar as the works at Allen Gibbon Bridge are concerned, that's going to include some reprofiling of the bend on the approach to the bridge and resurfacing over the bridge itself. In carrying out this work, we have actually worked with one of the timber transport hauliers to identify just exactly what the problem is at that location, because there have been some accidents associated with timber vehicles. So that work's ongoing and should be completed by autumn this year.
Okay, Alistair.
Thanks very much, sir. It was going back to the point that Graham raised. I would put it to you, Chair, that that's maybe another area of our processes that we should be reviewing, i.e. the use of compulsators, in appropriate circumstances, and talk when you're dealing with the likes of acquisition of land, etc. Because, I don't, and making the point, Chair, under no circumstances do I wish to see the council being accused of being high-handed or draconian. But the blunt fact of the matter is that when you're dealing with multiple sellers or people, who are giving you permission, to go on and do works on their land, there's always the potential, Chair, in fact, for somebody to turn around and say, no, I'm not playing ball. And at the end of the day, you've wasted a lot of time, energy and effort in negotiations with other willing parties. And the point I would suggest, sir, that we should be looking at is that we should be implementing these compulsators, for want of a better term, as soon as possible in the process, making it clear as we do so that why we're doing it, i.e. to avoid a situation coming up whereby everybody, is put to needless time, energy and effort and expense on occasions as well. So I think, Chair, that I'm not asking for, to make policy in the hoof today, but I think that's an area of our processes that we should be looking at, as I say, and slipping these in as soon as possible in the procedure, and the clear understanding that you're saying to the people concerned that, look, we hope we don't have to use these, but this is being done, as it were, to protect our position as an authority. And hopefully, if you're prepared to conduct yourself reasonably in your negotiations, it would never need to be implemented. But at the end of the day, it's there. It's a compulsator. It's meant to be used. And I personally feel on occasions in the past, sir, we have been a bit reluctant, overly reluctant, to recognise that and to deal with it accordingly and to use it. So I would hope, Chair, that what I'm saying resonates and that that's an area that we'd be looking at.
You're right in saying, though, that we have had options to use compulsory purchases in the past. I mean, certainly one in my ward, around the cycle route, that was an option. It came before members, and members decided not to pursue it. So, because the value was obviously not worth antagonising people on the basis of it was a small piece of land. But I would imagine that will come before members anyway. That option's already there. So I'm not sure what the change procedures would be, because that option, as I say, is already there and has been pursued where members obviously agree.
Forgive me, I'm obviously not making myself clear, Chair, but the point I would make is that when we start off negotiations, for instance, in relation to the specific case that Graham has raised, I think we should be making it clear to the landowners in question that this is what we're going to do. We're going to use the compulsators, the compulsory powers, not compulsory purchases in this case, but the coercive powers that the legislation allows us to use. And we will use these in the hope that, in fact, we can get the issues resolved as expeditiously as possible. As I say, I have no desire, Chair, to see the council being accused of being high-handed or draconian, but I think by the same token, it would assist in dealing with what very often, if it's left to pure negotiation, can be extremely time-consuming and almost, impossible processes, to reach agreement on. An observation, and I would hope that if colleagues feel that it's worthwhile exploring, it should be explored.
I certainly do nothing wrong with exploring that particular option. I would still wish members to make a decision like that, as opposed to just simply saying that it's going to happen, whatever the negotiations come up with. I think the members have a right to make that decision, particularly given the fact that there'll be costs involved in that particular action.
With your indulgence, sir, I think possibly at law you would find that members would be obliged to make the decision at the end of the day. That, before any such order, compulsory purchase order, etc., before any such order were to be confirmed, it has to come before members at the appropriate time. What I am suggesting is a look at the procedures, maybe perhaps to encourage people to negotiate more sensibly and more meaningfully than regrettably is sometimes the case. If you're prepared, to accept the suggestion that we'll look at it, I would be well content with that, Chair. Thank you.
I'm always prepared to take legal advice off you, Alistair, no problem at all. Okay. It's the only time I've heard a lawyer say that. Okay, Patsy.
Thank you. It's just on 3.34, which is to do with Kakubri onshore power supply. And I'm very pleased to see that we're doing this because I think, as we know, Kakubri is a very busy harbour, and I think to have proper electric power there is almost essential. I'd just like to be reassured that it will be completed this month, as it says in the report. And also, I wonder, with the marina there as well, was that looked at as needing anything added to it or improved or upgraded at the same time, or is that not under the same sort of grant?
With the Kakubri, with the power supply, the three-phase power supply to the fishing boats, fishing fleet, we are progressing the works. The delay will be, or there is a delay to the works completed in September because of the requirement to put in a substation by Scottish Power, and that slowed us down somewhat on the installation works. But we're working with colleagues in property and architectural services to progress this scheme as quickly as possible. With respect to the marina, this work isn't directly related to improvements on the marina at this stage, but we're aware, we liaise with Charles's team, Peter Roberts there, for other works that can be done, improvement works or repair works and such like, and you'll see that there's an investment in buoys for the channel as well at Kakubri Harbour, so we're obviously keen to see that continuing as a major resource in the area.
Chair, can I just have a follow-up? You say that, it does say in the report here that the works would be expected to be completed in September, so that's going to be a delay, but for how long? Have you any idea?
We will chase Scottish Power, and what I'll do is I'll come back to local members with an update on that. After this committee, I'll speak with the architects and find out whether they've got Scottish Power time frame for their works. But there's our works as well, which are remote from that in terms of laying ducts and installing the units on the quayside. And this works can obviously progress separately from the Scottish Power, but hooking up and actually putting a power supply to these bollards will be at the time frame to suit Scottish Power. We have a requirement, we need to do this works this year to draw down the funds, so it will be this year, to draw down the funds from Scottish Government.
Thanks, Chair. Just on the subject of land ownership again, and it's to do with Core Paths Network. I was just approached by a landowner last week telling me that we were looking to upgrade one of the core paths, and he had advised our staff that he wouldn't be allowing that to happen. No intention of preventing public access, but no allowing us to conduct an upgrade on the land. And I think it's somewhat disappointing that we spent so much time creating a portfolio of core paths that we never thought to sign up landowners to the concept and get them to agree that we could maintain and upgrade these paths. And it's just frustrating for me. I'm sure I'll speak to you about it because he seems quite surprised, but that individual spoke to me last week. And I thought that we in the process somewhere, when we went through all that inordinate length of time, that somebody would have signed up all these different landowners to agreement to maintaining a path and upgrades where necessary. But I will speak to you immediately after the meeting and just establish a communication link with them.
I think we did though, Jim. But I mean, obviously worth discussing any individual issues you've got with officers. But I'm convinced we did before that project went forward. That was part of the whole process. But certainly, if you've got an individual case where you think that's not happening, then it's worth speaking to officers about that. Can I also say, I mean, obviously we're a strategic committee looking at strategic issues, and I appreciate members have got a lot of individual ward questions, but it might be helpful to sort of pursue them with officers or with the committee if it's a specifically ward issue. rather than a general issue around the paper before us. Okay, I've got Craig next and then Brian.
Thank you, Chair. In 3.27 on page 23, footways programme, it states that the list of the footways work in Annandale and Eskdale exceeded the allocated budget, and therefore some of the works have had to be entered into the reserve programme. My question on this would be, is this because there has been added works to that programme since this committee agreed the original works programme earlier on in this year? And is that the reason why there's, the budget can't cope with the amount of work? Or is it because the costings of the original works have been found to be a shortfall, and therefore we cannot complete the original schemes that this committee agreed? Secondly, on page 31, at the bottom of the table, external funding. There's three particular programmes there that, according to the document here, we haven't spent a lot of external funding on at this time, and there is no figure in the forecast net spend. And I was just wondering, are these programmes going to be completed within the financial year, or are they possibly a 3-year running programme and we only have a certain amount to spend this year?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can certainly answer the first question, and that is the original budget estimates for the footway schemes identified too many schemes within that actual budget. So they underpriced the schemes. So when they got to the final programme of works, the works start to commence, they found that when they revisit these costs, that they're actually going to get less number of schemes for the value of the budget that's been allocated.
Do you want to come back on that particular point before we
Yes, Chair.
answer the next one?
Just well, that is a concern, and that will go for the whole region, I'm sure. If we're underpricing schemes at the start of the year when we actually set the works programmes, then that could have issues ongoing throughout the year and through following years, etc. So we need to make sure in future that when we're setting our works programme that we can actually complete that within the budget that's allocated.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have the exact detail of the schemes. It could be that we did actually have the right budget price, but the scheme was extended, or some of the schemes were extended. I don't have the exact detail, but all these budgets and all these programmes of work, there's got to be a degree of flexibility. Things change, and sometimes you can find that footways deteriorate, and you have to do more, or you might find that it's better value for money to in fact do an extra 30-40 metres because you're in the particular area. So there's got to be a certain amount of flexibility. It's not a common occurrence. Our guys know exactly how much these things cost, but there's got to be some flexibility around it. I can certainly find out more detail, the exact detail behind that for Councillor Peacock if you wish.
Okay, James, do you want to deal with the point regarding external funding?
With regards to the external funding, these projects are all this financial year, so this funding is to be agreed this financial year. In terms of the programmes as they progress, the top one, the Southwest Visitor Access Project, there's 2 schemes left on that, and that's a European funding. I'm being advised that that doesn't have to be spent this financial year, but it potentially will be. But the other 2 projects are scheduled to be spent this financial year.
Okay, Brian.
Thank you. Just going back to Kirkcudbright Harbour, James referred to it earlier, 3.2829 and 30, regarding the cost of the buoys. I was wondering what happens insofar as harbour dues and revenues are concerned in the operation of our harbours and the marina and so on and so forth, because there's no indication of any revenue streams that might offset any costs or expenditures attached to each of the operations of our harbours. And if I could just have some clearer understanding of that. I would also like to ask Charles on page 69, the 712 at Crocketford. I've previously referred to it as a patchwork quilt. It's now more like a bomb site. And I see that it's in here for as being carried forward from 13-14, and would like to know when something more might be done down through the village. It causes a trip hazard and is horrendous, the length of the village. Thank you.
Okay, obviously it's a capital report, so any revenue income from a harbour won't be shown in this particular report, but I don't know if anyone wishes to respond specifically to the issue around revenues from harbours. James or Charles, do you want to?
Yes, Chair, I can answer that one. That there's sort of almost two issues here, and when we operated the marina, we tried to operate on a break-even process whereby the funds that we took in revenue would balance out any costs in relation to the ongoing maintenance of the marina. Certainly in previous years that's been the case. Insofar as the harbour is concerned itself, the dues that we take do not reflect the cost to upkeep the harbour. Perhaps maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, when there was a real boom in fishing, the harbour was able to wash its face, and the dues that we took actually equalled the expenditure. I don't know if you're aware, but the dues that we take, there's actually a standing charge for having your boat, berthing your fishing boat at Kirkcudbright Harbour, and over and above that, there's a 1% charge on the value of the catch, which is probably one of the lowest in Scotland, and it's set at that level to reflect the support that we want to give the fishing industry in Kirkcudbright, and the level of support that the fishing industry in turn gives to the community of Kirkcudbright and indeed Dumfries and Galloway. So I don't know if I've answered the question exactly, but there's almost two different sort of sets of fees and charges there, and certainly the harbour one doesn't reflect the expenditure. I can give you offline the exact expenditure and fees for you to compare, but there's a lot of capital schemes that aren't taken into that, i.e. the lighting of the channel, which benefits both leisure users and actual users from the fishing industry. So there's a complex bunch of figures surrounding it, and I'm happy to expand on that if that's something, Chair, that you feel that you would like.
Something you want, Brian?
Yeah, I think for members to have a better understanding of what the balances are that are coming through the various harbours, I do recognise that there's no requirement here for a revenue stream to be identified. However, where we're talking about 23,554 and 7,780 insofar as replacements are concerned, where there is no other income to offset against that, that's where my question arises from as to how the day-to-day operation and revenue stream might interact in that regard. And so far as the marina itself operating is concerned, Charles did mention that it's a break-even fee, which I fully accept, but it's not break-even if the advantage is there by the use of the buoys and the use of the lighting, and if that's not incorporated into the thinking in terms of charges. But I'd be grateful for a bit further information around the general operations in those regards.
And there was a second point that Brian raised.
Chair, I think the delay in the scheme at Crocky Ford was due to the fact that there was actually a development there. Some houses were being constructed, and I think that we were waiting till such times as that had been completed. I would imagine the development would have service connections, etc., which would probably influence when we would carry out the works.
Can I come back in, Chair?
Certainly can, Brian, yeah.
Thanks, Charles, for that. I do understand that the developer has been working there, and I do understand the level of delay that there has been in that regard. However, long before the developer began work, various services had been up and down the road and dug it up, and the reinstatements that those various services had left behind left a great deal to be desired. But I wonder also if with the developer impacting on the general conditions in the area, if planning gain were considered at any time, or if that's something that's being further negotiated.
Again, Chair, I'd have to come back on that one. I'd have to ask the specific officers that are dealing with that just exactly what the circumstances are surrounding it. There could be some arrangement with public utilities developers to come in and share costs or whatever, you know, as does happen in these circumstances. But I'm not sure. I'd have to come back to you on that one.
Members, can we turn to the recommendations? We're on page 19 and 20. Members happy to note 2.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13. And could we add in the point about proposals coming forward in relation to the well, the High Street? Ian?
Thanks for that, Chairman. Just in regards to how have we captured the point, how again, because rather than having to listen back to the minute, as we kind of stumbled across that at the beginning of this meeting and try and get a clear understanding. There's a few action points being raised. How do we capture that? Do we capture that in a minute, or do we need that verbalised at this point? There's different things being asked for. How will they come back?
I think there's two separate things here. There's the members' decisions, and there's obviously actions that officers have to take forward, which are operational matters. And I think that at the point that was made earlier was that the action around the well was something that officers were going to take forward. It wasn't necessarily a member decision.
No, that's correct, Chairman. We have operational action sheet, which for every committee, so the officers get a copy of that, and then take on board any actions which are not specifically a strategic decision in the papers.
Ian, do you want to come back in then?
Just in regards to that, can I hear what the actions were then, please? Just because obviously you've got that, unless you've got to listen back. But I've made some points particularly clear for myself. One in relation to Appendix 1, and there was others in regards to further information from Charles.
I mean, it's primarily an operational note for officers to do the work, but if any member wants to see it, I'm sure that can be accessible, yeah. Okay, folks, can we turn to item number 7? This is the 3-year funding agreement between Dumfries and Galloway Council and Visit Scotland. Do a quick changeover of the bench over there. Queen of the South fan, I shouldn't joke about benches changing since we lost another manager an hour ago, but can we welcome Chris Brown, Mark Geddes, and also Paula MacDonald, the Regional Director for Visit Scotland in Dumfries and Galloway. Can I ask Director if there's anything he wishes to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report at this stage, Chair. Thank you. Okay,
can I open it up to members? Patsy, first of all.
Thank you. It's to do with the Kakubri Visitors Information Centre, which if you look at page 96, you see the total number for this year of the footfall, which is just over 40,000, well, 40,500, which makes it the second highest in the area. But I then turn to page 119, and it's been an all-year one, it says there. And then I turn to page 119, and I notice that you're going, Kakubri is being put down to being seasonal. And I just wonder what months you're taking out and why you're doing it when it's got such a high footfall. We worked quite hard in Kakubri to get the TIC open, the visitor centre open all year round, because we are trying to extend the season, and we've done that very successfully, I think, and that shows, I think, with the whole town, the atmosphere in the whole town.
Sure, I think that's a really good question. From a Kirkcudbright point of view, we work very much the same as you in that we try and extend the seasonality of the information centres. So we have a very, very short closing period for the Kirkcudbright Information Centre, which actually doesn't kick in until the second week in November. It's closed over December and January, and it reopens again in February because we know that the extension of that season, but we monitor the footfall on a daily and an hourly basis. And with the performance of the number of visitors that are coming in to ask for information and request information over that December and January months, that gives us the opportunity to run that as a more seasonal information centre, because there just literally is not any visitors that come there. But as the years have gone on, if you looked at the operating timescale for Kirkcudbright, we monitor it every year, and every year it's extended by another few days and then another week. And then, 4 years ago it used to close in October after the last school week, and it doesn't anymore because we now get a little bit of a bump at the end of October and into the first week in November, where those people that don't have kids and they're taking advantage of competitive rates or nice things to see and do in the area. So if the season keeps extending, we will keep extending the opening hours for Kirkcudbright, but we're pleased with it. It's a really well-performing site.
So for this coming winter, for instance, it will shut in November, middle of November, and open again in the beginning of February.
Yeah, and again, we'll monitor that. If we're not seeing that tailing off, then we'll keep it open just that little bit longer. But based on this year's performance so far, we're estimating, and it is an estimate, that it will be November, and it will open again normally just before Valentine's. So.
Okay, can I bring Ian in?
Thanks, Chairman. Just a couple of points. I suppose it mentions in 3.4 what the remit of Visit Scotland is and how it's kind of funded and so on and so forth. What I'd like to get an understanding of, put it into context, how does Visit Scotland work across all 32 local authorities across Scotland? D&G obviously have quite a good relationship with Visit Scotland, so even Scottish Borders for that matter. How much do they contribute towards Visit Scotland? Just to bring that into context. I mean, quite clearly stated earlier, paragraph 3.9, I think it is from memory. It does. No, it's not. But anyways, it says within the report there's nearly 7,000 jobs, nearly just short of 6,000 direct, and 1,200 odd indirect jobs, £300 million a year. And I think for Dumfries and Galloway to be putting a £240,000 contribution towards that, it's pretty small, really, in the big terms. You think of the economy and the benefits and the jobs that brings. So it's to get an understanding, because you're a Scottish Government funded body primarily. So what does the Scottish Borders, who are almost comparable, very, very comparable in Dumfries and Galloway terms, how much do they contribute, how much do they get back compared to us, or other authorities like them, just to get an understanding, please?
So I guess the first thing to really clarify is that we work at the pleasure of the local authorities, and each local authority engages with us on a different level across their regions. Some local authorities place greater emphasis on tourism and the development of the tourism sector because it's got a higher economic contribution to the GDP for the region. So that's quite a difficult question to answer because they aren't mirror images across each of the local authorities. It depends what emphasis the local authority put on tourism as a key sector for their region. From a Dumfries and Galloway point of view, we understand that it's a significant contribution, and that's why we literally chase every pound that is put into investing in tourism. Every local authority contributes what they feel is appropriate to generate return on investment. So I wouldn't really be able to go in and discuss what other financial figures each of the local authorities are contributing. Some contribute more to marketing and less to skill development. So everyone's different, unfortunately. So it's not an easy answer to give.
I think what's clear from our point of view is the sheer importance of tourism to the economy in this area. And you talked about the 7,000 jobs, £300 million in the economy. It's a really crucial industry for our region. What's also clear is that as members, we still have to be obviously confident that we are clear what we're asking for that contribution. We do have a an important economic development role to play as a council, and tourism is a key part of that. But I think the key point here is that we're not putting money in to pay for something, I suppose, the Scottish Government are paying for. We have to be very clear what we're asking for from that £240,000. Obviously, that's contained within the report where the investment went last year and what that money was spent on. And if members have different views and they believe other items should be commissioned, then that's certainly something that members can certainly pursue. But that, we have to be clear what we're asking for that £240,000. I think that's the important part, which is over and above whatever money the Scottish Government provide. Do you want to come back in here? Yeah, okay. Okay, Alistair.
Thanks, Chair. It's paragraph 3.10, sir. We're talking, in fact, about Visit Scotland in consultation with local authorities are nationally undertaking a full review of visitor information centre provision, which includes Dumfries and Galloway. And I think, from some of the statistical information in the appendices, that's somewhat overdue. Really, my question would be, when is it anticipated, Chair, that report will, in fact, be brought before this committee for consideration?
Thank you, Chair. We're currently undergoing a review in partnership with Visit Scotland. And I think Councillor Geddes has really underlined a key change in visitors and how they use visitor information centres and indeed how they book. And I think one of the things that we've really taken from this, from a service, is working closely with Visit Scotland, but also the tourism sector is actually putting on some social media training specifically for the sector. And I think you can see in the figures there that when this report was actually completed, we'd got something like 18.6% of the tourism sector using online presence. We've actually rolled out some specific social media training through Business Gateway, and that figure from June until now has increased to 41.1%. So I think that really underpins that we're actually working very closely in ensuring that we're underpinning where the visitor is looking to book holidays, book accommodation, and responding accordingly.
Thanks, Chair. Helpful response.
I think you just have to look at the figures on page 93 and the number of visits to the website to see exactly where people engage when it comes to booking tourism and finding information about the region. Okay, members have any other questions? Bring Patch in, then Ian.
It was just it's just to do with Destination Dumfries and Galloway. Just wonder how you work with them, if you do, and how that is progressing, if it is.
So Visit Scotland across the whole of Scotland works in partnership at the pleasure of the local authorities, and if there is another destination organisation, some areas have destination organisations, some areas have area tourism partnerships, and we will work in partnership with the bodies that are there in that area. However, we're very, very clear that Visit Scotland's remit and our role is to market the destination first and foremost, and that's through pre-arrival marketing, through websites and brochures and guides, and then on-arrival information. So once the visitors have booked and they've made a decision to come, then that's our role as well. Quality assurance is our role. So we will absolutely work in partnership to support the regional tourism strategy, but we do that across all regions, so it's not anything unique to be working in a three-way partnership in Dumfries and Galloway.
Okay, Ian, and then Jim.
Thanks, Chairman. Just a point of clarity in regards to, this is 1 year funding. I think we've agreed it anyways in principle, so this is 1 year funding. As we move towards the budget, I mean, some might want to allocate more, some might want to allocate less as we move towards the next financial year, or even possibly do a 3-year funding package like we have done previously. So the question I asked earlier is certainly something that I would come back to at a later point in time in regards to getting a clear understanding. We obviously have got benefits. To look at the gearing, 14-to-1 is a fantastic return on investment. That does create jobs. It's quite clear within the report. But there's some more underlying questions I would like to come back to later on, probably in the year.
Certainly the committee agreed the budget for the department for the year ahead in July, and that obviously included the investment and support from Visit Scotland. And what we're being asked to do is obviously to look at the detail today, and clearly as we go forward and setting budgets, with a commitment to set a 3-year budget as a council next year, then this area will, like every area, will always have to be considered by members, and any proposals that want to come forward then I'd encourage members to bring those forward. Okay, Jim.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question about the information points. Can I understand maintaining the visitor information centres, but is there no an opportunity to extend the information points right across the region? Because I'm quite sure you'll agree that folk will arrive at some communities without necessarily going to Gretna or Stranraer. And according to this, you've got information points in partnership at Moffat, Mill and Gateshead Fleet. Are there no opportunity to develop that right across the region to other communities to ensure that when a visitor arrives here, they've got access to the same services and the same information that you provide elsewhere?
Any particular communities in mind, Jim? No,
but well, Drumlanrig Castle, obviously, one like Head Museum. There are lots that I could throw in, but and the oldest post office in the world. I'll not tell you where that comes from. But I just wonder why it's restricted, because folk will come to these locations specifically, and when you get them there, you would want them to learn what else was available in the region, and indeed encourage them to go elsewhere in the region.
So it's a very good and relevant question. When we were looking at the information and partnership model, it was because we were having challenges around the infrastructure, and we needed to potentially look at taking back infrastructure and then working in partnership. And what we had done, especially in locations like Gateshead Fleet and the Moffat Mill, our information centre footfall was going down significantly, but we could see that there was high footfall sites within those territories. So it's always going to be an information and partnership point. We'll always look at what's the level of footfall. So if there's a specific visitor attraction in the Annan area that gets significant footfall, there's two things to consider. There's a setup cost. There is a setup cost to the community because it has to be branded. It's normally between £15,000 and £20,000 for that setup cost, and that's a cost that the community or the operator potentially has to absorb. So that's quite a significant barrier for that. There's also an issue around state aid, because we're a publicly funded organisation. We get money from the European Regional Development Fund, and from a state aid point of view, are we interfering? There would always need to be a question asked. Are we interfering with a private sector opportunity? There are two companies that we know of that are distributors for leaflets and guides, AEE distribution and direct distribution. So there's always that question of whether or not Visit Scotland would then be interfering with what could potentially be a private sector opportunity. So the door isn't closed on any community, and we're open to have that discussion, but there's some critical things that the community would need to understand before they maybe enter into that conversation.
That's fine. Thanks for that. Aye, thanks.
Okay, members, can we turn to the recommendations? Okay, on page 91, are members happy to note 2.1 and to agree the allocation at 2.2 and to agree to receive further reports? Okay, thanks very much, and can I thank everyone for answering the questions. And I think just to reiterate again the commitment of the Council to continue to work in partnership with Visit Scotland. I think it's been an incredibly positive year for tourism in the region, and it's a vital component of the local economy. So please pass on our thanks for all the work of your team. Okay, members, can we turn to item number 8? Okay, item number 8 is a follow-up report from last month's discussion on the Windfarm Community Benefit Policy. We've got you and Chris and McNabb to answer any questions members have. Can I ask Alice, was there anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open it up to members for questions? George?
Just a very simple question, actually. Why are we recommending that we go down the road of spending between £5,000 and £7,000 on council advice when it says quite plainly in the guidance, the new guidance which is out, that local authorities should be aware that guidelines cannot be enforced through the planning system and must remain as optional guidance? I'm just wondering why are we, what information do we hope to gain from council regarding this situation?
I think that the advice is around the Scottish Government's best practice proposals rather than our policy, the enforceability of our policy. I think that the advice is around to what extent do we have to adhere to the Scottish Government's good practice guide. Unless anybody wishes to correct me, but that's what we're seeking agreement on today, which is, I think, was suggested by Alistair at the meeting last month. Alistair, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm grateful to you, Chair. You know, I would take up the point that George has made. You know, local authorities should be aware that guidelines cannot be enforced through the planning system and must remain as an optional guidance. Well, you know, to quote the late great Sheriff Principal Johnson, that's the views of mere civil servants. I would like, you know, that's never been judicially determined. And at the end of the day, you know, until you know, statements like that are judicially determined, they're nothing more than statements. And I think, you know, my views, Chair. I'm not going to waste the time in the meeting, or your time in particular, about the need for a meaningful regional socio-economic fund. I have advocated, you know, that we get this advice for some considerable length of time now, because we were told by certain officials of this authority, I regret to say, that certain situations pertained in relation to what we could and what we couldn't do, and it would appear, in fact, that that advice was not best founded or particularly well founded. I think, standing the Scottish Government's change of tack over this issue, I think it's even more imperative, Chair, in my view at least, that we do, in fact, get good quality advice telling us just exactly what the implications will be of that for our purported policies. And that's why I'm not profligate with my own money, Chair, and I wouldn't want to be profligate with the councils, but I still think at the end of the day this is probably money well spent. And I would have no compunction at the appropriate time, sir, you know, in moving, in fact, that the recommendations be adopted. Thank you.
I mean, it's clear that the change is the Scottish Government's good practice principles, and to what extent do we have to adhere to them? Absolutely. George, and then Ian, and then Jim.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me back in. I think it's imperative, if that's the road we're going to go down, that we have some sort of guideline as to how long it will take to get the proper council advice, because the longer this goes on, I mean, we've had a policy in place now for over 3 years, which has been, you know, and the way things are going, I mean, I don't know how long it will take for council to give an opinion, but I certainly would like to know.
I think the aim is to come back in November. I think it's a valid point. We obviously want to pin this one down as soon as possible.
Trying to pin this down for 3 years, you know, and to wait maybe another 6 months for council advice, I think totally out of order.
Well, certainly November's the commitment. And unfortunately, we didn't set the government's guidelines. Obviously, that's something up with our control. But absolutely, I think getting an early feedback on that is important. I think, was it Ian and then Jim?
Thanks, Chairman. I agree with Alistair's sentiments entirely. I think the amount of reports we could reflect back on and say we've took council advice and it's been over the phone, when in fact this is the correct way to take council advice, and I think we'll bottom this out, it'll be done and dusted, and we move forward and put a proper policy in place that we can actually adhere to.
Okay, Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Just two things. It might have been helpful if the good practice and principles document was attached to this, because it's not that many pages long and members could have read it then having taken advantage to do so. And the only other thing I would say is, do we actually need the last 2 lines in recommendation 2.1, because it doesn't matter whether it's in light of the published good practice principles or no. What we should be trying to establish is whether or no the council can enforce the council's Windfarm community benefit policy. So the fact that the Scottish Government have produced a good practice guidelines irrelevant, I would suggest.
I think members were clear that the decision we made in July was to seek information around council's opinion, and it was very clearly stated at the time when that request was made, it was around the good practice principles and SPP, so we're very clear on that, and I think it's important to keep that in, because that's why the request was made in the first place. What prompted the request was the publication of the good practice principles. I think it's important to keep that in.
Just to come back then, Chair, so we're not, but that's fine, so we're doing we're saying a 2-stage thing at the same time, reacting to the published document, but also establishing whether or no it is in fact enforceable, because we could well get advice that the good practice could be breached, but it might still not be enforceable, so we need to have that at the end of the day anyway.
can't preempt what the advice is going to be, or we wouldn't have to ask for it if we could. Okay, any other members? Jeff?
Have you been in touch with the Scottish Government as to how they justify the change between their guidance in the draft and the final policy? Because obviously they've gone completely the other way. Do we know why they've done that?
In terms of the SPP, that went out to consultation, and the initial draft was in line with the previous policy. But when it came back for actually being published, it went against what had been in the draft. In terms of how that came about, we, through planning colleagues, were involved in the process, but we haven't been in touch with the Scottish Government about that. What we're looking to get is guidance as to whether they can be enforceable as per the last committee.
Well, it wouldn't cost us anything to actually go back to the Scottish Government and ask them why they've changed their mind on this. It might be helpful.
Sure you'll get an answer. Okay, any other members? Okay, folks, can we turn to the recommendation? Are members happy to note 2.1? Happy to agree to 2.2 and 2.3? Okay, thanks very much. Okay, can we turn to item number 9, which is a report on derelict properties? Okay, we've got Ewan to answer any questions members have. Could I ask Alistair if there's anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open it up to members? Okay, Alistair?
Thanks very much, Chair. When, oh when, are we going to stop talking about this and dancing round it and really get a grip of it and drive it forward? I would wager, Chair, that there's scarcely a community in Dumfries and Galloway that does not have at least one and probably more derelict properties within its boundaries and its parameters. And, you know, apart from reducing amenity at the end of the day, it's a very real blight on the lives of people who have got the misfortune to live cheek by jowl with these. And as far as I'm concerned, as I say, we've talked about this over the last several years, and really it's now time, you know, to grasp the nettle, you know, from the point of view of the resource implications and to push on with this. I also think there's going to have to be a change, a cultural change, as it were, in certain sections of the council's activity as well. And I'm saying that not in any disrespectful or censorious sense of the term, Chair. I mean, I had a meeting recently with a member of the planning staff, and it was Jessica Taylor. And let me say right at the outset that, you know, totally courteous, professional, and helpful in relation to a derelict property in Whitehaven. And no, it's not the former Grapes Hotel, I can assure Jim Dempster. It's a property called 9 High Street, where a number of years ago, sir, we served an amenity notice under Section 179 of the legislation on it, and required the owner at the end of the day, you know, to do something about it, like taking the roof off and doing various other works. Now, the property has deteriorated in the meantime, and the Community Council, Whitehaven, Cradle of Christianity in Scotland, Community Council, quite rightly, in my view, are getting exercised about this. And there is a reluctance on the part of the Council as planning authority, as it were, to grasp any further nettle in relation to this. It's been left basically, pending the outcome of today's decision, for me to organise a meeting with my 2 ward colleagues, with the owner of the property, with a view to sort of trying to, you know, get an agreed plan, and Community Council representatives, and trying to get an agreed plan, you know, worked out with a view to addressing it. Now, I'm not, forgive me if this is sounding, it's Whitehaven, it's parochial. It's not. It's symptomatic of the issues which I'm sure can be replicated the length and breadth of the region, Chair. And, you know, they're by no means unique to Whitehaven. As I say, we've really got to get a grip of this. And where we need to show intestinal fortitude to do so, where there are other approaches which are the best way forward to do so as well. But we've got to allocate the resources and employ the members of staff to allow us to do that, bearing in mind, of course, that, you know, they will have to act as coordinators, etc., for the various other departmental interests which are inevitably involved in this. I would hope, sir, that we'll give this a clear, unequivocal steer today and get on and do the business. I think our communities deserve nothing less. Thank you.
been saying, Alistair, I think every member's made it absolutely clear that they see this as an issue that does need to be addressed. I think that's why the recommendations not only put in place the resourcing, if you like, to employ the staff needed to implement this, but also sends a clear signal that we do want to take a far more proactive approach when it comes to derelict properties. I think that's an issue that every member can identify properties in their ward, there are several in mind certainly, and we do want to see action to try and tackle them. Nobody believes that there's a magic wand out there, and some of this will be complex and difficult, but the first step is we know what the powers are, we know what we can do, is to put in place that staff resource in order to get on with the work, and I think it's certainly long overdue, but it's good to see that we are making progress with the report in front of us today. Okay, Ian.
Thanks, Chairman. I think Alistair brings up some valid points here, certainly, but when I read this, I no sooner read it than somebody else was on the phone, another constituent, I should say, in regards to the Stapleton Road property. It's an old road stroke bins depot, and it's an absolute blight on community in Annan. It's unbelievable. So I think we have to look in the mirror when it comes to this as well. And it's okay as pointing the finger at some of our community buildings, but we've got our own property. It's a wee bit rich saying that we have to make sure our constituents that they're looking after their properties. We're in a lot of the terms, not every term, we're not actually looking after our own. So, I mean, I agree with the principle that we should move forward, should be making improvements to derelict properties, but in particular in Stapleton Road in Annan, it's an absolute disgrace. Whether it's rats, whether it's seagulls, doesn't matter what it is, it's infested and it should be razed to the ground.
Ian, any other member? Jim?
Just a couple of things. I think if we get this right, it will send out a message to people that they can't, and it's right, you're right, it's for the town centre of Dumfries to the smallest village in the region, that people are sitting in property, just let them deteriorate until it comes up their back to develop them, or until they become valuable enough that they can realise what they consider as an asset. And in the meantime, we're left with streets that look as if they've been absolutely abandoned. I think it's wrong. And I think that when we're doing this, there should be a message going out, and it should also be a financial impact on these people as well. Then we can apply treble second home tax instead of double in these properties. We need some way to ensure that people do something with them, either to offload them to somebody that's going to develop them, or to do something themselves to keep them right, because it just lowers the tone at every community in the region. I just think it's wrong. The only other thing I'd like to ask, and it's not for today, but I'd like to see it, is an indication of where we are with the pilot scheme that we introduced. There was a property at Anne's house in Stranraer, one in Lockerbie and one in Kirkconnell. It's actually one in Sankara, and thanks to your staff, that's now been resolved, or it will be, I think, by this time next week. But the Kirkconnell one intrigues me because I've not seen any change there in a year, and officers went away with specific direction that there were 3 project areas or pilot project areas that they were going to address. So I'd like to see, as soon as a report back to members, just what we've done, what we've achieved. I think it's been a year since we agreed that, because there's no point in then accepting this sort of approach and a year later on finding we're no further for it either, because it is important to the well-being of the communities as well as the maintenance of and it's usually the high streets, funnily enough, where there are commercial elements to it, and that makes it even worse that some shopkeepers and owners are keeping their properties in a high standard and the inn next door looks like a tip. It's just not right. But I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Okay, Brian, do you want to come in?
Thank you. I had the pleasure some years ago to hear the presentation that we got, elected members got from Tom Sturgeon, and I thought we were moving then, and I share the frustration being expressed by members now that we don't seem to have gathered any impetus off the back of that increased knowledge at that time. But I'm also curious to know, we had a derelict buildings fund set aside some time ago, which I think was in the figure of about £100,000, and I wonder what's happened to it, and if it might be appropriate to draw on in these circumstances.
That's a similar reference to Councillor Dempster's point about the identification of buildings in Lockerbie, Kirkconnell and Stranraer. And I'll provide a briefing on the progress. There has been progress on this, but I can definitely provide a briefing to members well before the next committee to give you an update on where that's at.
Okay, folks, can we turn to the recommendations? Okay, members happy to note 2.1 and agree 2.2 and 2.3. Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, can we turn to item number 10, which is a report on the Wigtownshire, proposed Wigtownshire Community Sports Centre. Okay, we've got Stephen, Jack and Ewan Green to answer members' questions. And can I ask Alice if there's anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open up to members? Graham?
Yeah, very simple question, Chair. Why 2.2 in the recommendations? Why are we going to the CCS committee? Surely this committee should just agree it today.
Agree. What specifically?
2 is asking us to remit this to the CCS committee. Why?
I mean, we're not a sports committee. That is CCS committee. Pursuing a sports centre is obviously a matter for CCS committee to pursue. What we are simply being asked to do is consider 2 potential sites, but I think the recommendation is clear that there are other options available, and that should be pursued. It's out with the remit of this committee. Very much the lead committee is CCS rather than this committee. I mean, we've got a role to play in maybe assisting with any particular land that we have responsibility for, but we don't have a role to play in developing a sports centre. Very much out with our remit. Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, sir. Paragraph of recommendation 2.4, can I be assured that this is not Fabian tactics, i.e. Delaying that as per Fabius Cunctator, no?
No, I can absolutely assure you. I think as part of the overall development of the waterfront, we still wait for the outcome of the market testing. But clearly, there are a number of projects in Stranraer that may benefit from a community use linked to that development, particularly if land became available. So it's certainly something. It's certainly not the main driver for the market testing, but it's one of the outcomes that we will consider when we move forward. So it's absolutely. I think it's relevant to ensure that members know that we will be considering all options on the waterfront for future uses.
Sorry, point of order, Chair. Could I just have clarification that on page 147 of 392, that option 2 is correctly identified on the map? Because I have it in good authority from a local member as well that that was not the location as agreed by area committee, but rather the point alongside.
Option 2 you're referring to, Brian, is it?
Option 2, Chair, yep.
And you're saying that it's a different site from the one that's in the map?
That's correct, yep. The shaded site actually south of that, if I can put it that way.
The car park at the front, basically. Right, okay. And that's what Wigtownshire Area Committee put forward as a proposed site.
But it's the identification on the map of option 2
right.
That's incorrect. That's what I'm suggesting.
Members are in agreement at Wigtownshire Area Committee that option 2, whichever the 2 locations that you're suggesting, was not a feasible option? Yeah. Okay. So it wouldn't change the recommendations then. Yeah.
For reasons of accuracy on the map, the location was in question by members.
Okay, I'll ask Stephen to answer that, because obviously I was in the area committee.
Thanks, Chair. Yep, option 2, it was to be the former Marine Lake area, and that's where the shaded area is where the hard standing is going to be, and boatyard, etc. So that's what I understand was the area that was being considered, because the area to the south of that is the car park, and you are going to need car parking facilities to service the building itself.
Okay, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just sort of concerned a wee bit that, and I appreciate at the moment we're just looking at an option for the site for this particular community sports centre setup. But when we're looking through it, I mean, there's a couple of things that we have to consider as a council. I mean, is this within the priorities that we have set? And in 3.13, Sports Scotland, who are engaged to run the facilities planning model, have said that the results in the model suggest there's no further requirement for the traditional sports hall type of facilities. So the Wigtownshire Community Trust there, I presume, is an independent body set up to take this forward under their own remit, and it's not something that is asked for the council to take forward and therefore fund and build, etc.
Good point, Craig. You want to answer that, Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's an independent body. They're in the process of achieving charitable status to take it forward. And the mix of facilities in terms of 10-pin bowling, indoor bowling, etc., are different from what the local authority are providing in terms of traditional sports hall or swimming pool facilities. So that's the difference between the two.
Any other members? Shh. Any other members? No. Okay, can we turn to the recommendations then? Okay, which are on page 129. Okay, members happy to agree 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 for noting. Okay, and we're happy to refer the matter to CCS committee to consider. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, folks, can we turn to item number 3, which is a report on proposed leader programme for 2014-2020. We've got Nicola Hill joining us, who's the coordinator of the programme, and also Ewan to answer any questions that members have. Alistair, is there anything to add to the report?
Nothing else to add to the report at this stage, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open it up to members? Managed to tarry it out. Should have put Windfarms on at the end rather than the leader programme. Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. Obviously, it's a programme that I think this council needs to support as to the benefits that's shown and for future programmes running forward over the next 7 years or so. A couple of points, though. With this, I need to have some clarity as to, as this is a continuation of what we've already had as our leader programme comes to an end in December of this year. And because of the strategic setup that is shown in the documents here, is this a new format that we're looking to take forward for future funding? Is a new type of format, and therefore we have the need for the strategic management and then the various subgroups underneath that. And therefore that sort of has an implication into the staff and resources. And I appreciate that there is no money put into this from Dumfries and Galloway Council. It's all Scottish Government money. But with the team that is recommended of 6 to take this programme forward over the next years, the administration costs there amounting to just short of £2.5 million, I think is quite a high figure. I would be more encouraged if we could have reduced that and put more of that money into the actual delivery of the programme to benefit the community over the next 6 years. So I'd just like some comments on that, please, if I could.
Is that Craig?
Yeah, there is a bit of a step change with the new leader programme going forward into 2014 to 2020. And we are taking our sort of direction from Scottish Government, and we are being encouraged to be looking at a much more strategic delivery programme. And there will still always be the element of what we would refer to as challenge fund, where projects bring their applications forward. And I think in the past, our programmes have been much more reactive to what people have brought forward to us. And we are looking to be much more proactive and more strategic in the coming funding period. And that kind of dictates a different format to the governance structure that we have to look at. Again, Scottish Government are encouraging all of the leader programmes and many of the other European funding programmes to adopt the community-led local development approach to the funding programmes. And we are being encouraged to put an awful lot more emphasis on animation, promotion of the programme, and being much more visible across the leader areas. And with that obviously incurs a higher cost, and it does require a higher level of resource. But to hopefully add a bit of comfort there, if we take the full 25%, which is being recommended by Scottish Government colleagues, we would obviously be undertaking a mid-term review of the programme. And if at that point we identified that there was going to be an underspend on the administration side, those funds can then be transferred back over into project funding. If we got to the mid-term position and we hadn't taken that full 25%, we wouldn't be able to do it in the opposite direction. But we obviously will review that. And if at the mid-term point we establish that we're not going to need to use all of that money for administration, it will be put back over into project.
Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. Can I say, first of all, I'm particularly indebted to Craig for asking that question, because that was certainly one that was discussed at our group yesterday, and that's helpful to know. Two issues, sir, that I would like to raise. First of all, in relation to Dumfries and Stranraer being included in the programme going forward, which is different from previously. And let me make it clear that I'm not averse to the principle of that, Chair. I think both towns, do need assistance, albeit that the report says, in fact, that it will be related primarily, as it were, to projects which will impact on their respective hinterlands. Can we have the assurance or have some information, Chair, as to how that will be done? That would be the first question. And the second question, sir, and as a member of a Fisheries Local Action Group, or council representative with certain other colleagues from time to time on it, I didn't declare an interest here because I don't feel I've got an interest to declare on it, but can I perhaps be told just exactly how the Fisheries Local Action Group, or the FLAG, will be sort of roped into the project going forward, and how different that would be from its relationship, as for the previous project? Thanks, Chair.
Nicola?
Regarding the inclusion of Dumfries and Stranraer, in the previous leader programmes, we've always observed the population threshold of 10,000, which was stipulated by Scottish Government, and therefore neither Dumfries or Stranraer were deemed to be eligible locations for leader funding. Given the sort of change in approach to the new programme, and certainly with Stranraer, the population is just over the 10,000. Certainly it was felt that those locations ought to be included in the new programme, because they do act as hubs for their surrounding rural hinterland, and it is very much a two-way relationship that they have between the hub town and the rural areas that are supported. They're supporting each other, to be fair. And the second point, the role of the FLAG. we have been working incredibly closely with the current Fisheries Local Action Group to ensure that we are taking forward an integrated approach to rural development in the new programme. And those conversations have certainly allowed us to present what we feel is an integrated approach across rural and coastal communities for Dumfries and Galloway. Going forward, obviously the current European Fisheries Fund will run until the end of 2015, so there is a little bit of a crossover point there, but we will be looking for fisheries representation on the Strategic Management Group, and there will be a refresh of the Fisheries Local Action Group. It will be referred to as the Fisheries Subgroup in the new programme, but there will be a refresh of that representation towards the end of next year, and there will still be an equivalent to the current flag in the new programme.
Grateful, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Nicola. Okay, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question regarding the applications for the programme, and I appreciate this is going to be a new setup moving forward. But I have had comments from groups within my area to say that LEADER is a particularly difficult programme to access with applications and therefore gain funding for that. So I'm wondering if there is some sort of simplified or more simplified application process being looked at to take this new programme forward and therefore have a wider benefit for more groups, because there are certain groups that are put off with it because they have said it's really difficult to access the funding from this. And I appreciate that, you know, with 3 project officers being looked at for this, then they might be in a situation to help take those groups forward. But it was just the application progress initially I've been told by groups is really, really difficult to access.
I think unfortunately it comes with the territory with the European funding that there is always going to be an element of administration that goes along with that. And the approach that we've taken in Dumfries and Galloway is that we want to try and support our applicants as much as we possibly can. And I think that is borne out in the level of resource that we're looking to have in the team in order to be able to take applicants through the whole process. And there is an element of hand-holding that needs to be done there, but there's also an element of capacity building that needs to be done with groups who maybe haven't accessed European funding before. And that's our responsibility, to take them through that process and assist them through the process as much as possible. Certainly with the administration, Scottish Government are looking to develop or are in the process of finalising a new IT system for the LEADER programme going forward. And there will be an application process online for community groups. But again, we're taking that very much as our responsibility to make sure that community groups and individuals understand how to go through that process and access the funding as easily as possible. We are looking at potentially being able to offer what we would refer to as Leader Light, which is a much more simplified application process for the smaller amounts of funding, but that's still in developmental stage.
Okay, any other members? Ronnie?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the additional papers we've got. It follows on from what Alistair was saying with the membership and how it's made up. And just where members fit in. I mean, I see in the recommendations they're asking for an elected member for the board or your strategic group. But if you look at the page, strategic group, which is on page 209, membership of the strategic management group will include the chair of each of the 3 subgroups, which is the flag, leader and enterprise, which is fine. And then you've got the flag subgroup, which Alistair and I know how it's made up of, and it's going to be smaller, and there has to be a balance between public and private, if you like. It's just where the local member fits in. If we're nominating somebody to the strategic board, if that's what it's called, and then there's Alistair and I who are nominated from the council to sit on the flag, so there'll be more members on different things. It doesn't mention membership, members' membership, if you like. So I just wondered where the elected member fits into this process.
I mean, I think the first point is that it's a step change from what previously happened, because effectively, in many ways, we didn't really scrutinise or actually appreciate, I think, this particular programme. Very often the report to members was simply through briefcase, and I think one of the changes in recommendation 2.5 is actually to get an annual report to this committee, and also to obviously have a member from this committee on the strategic group. So I think there is a step change there of increased member involvement, and actually to an extent maybe increased member appreciation of this particular programme, which, I mean, I had the pleasure last year of meeting a number of the people from various projects that had succeeded in getting funding from this, and a fantastic amount of work taking place right across the region. But I don't think as a committee we've either appreciated that or even scrutinised that in the past, because we haven't had a report before. So I think that's a positive step forward, that we will have an annual performance report coming to this committee for members to see exactly how this project's being taken forward in the future. Ronnie,
Yeah, and I read that. So there's going to be somebody from this committee on the strategic board, but there's 2 members on the flag. I don't know about the other 2 subgroups, if there's elected members on that. Are we saying that there'll be one of the members on the flag is the chair? Because the previous chair stood down, and either Alistair or I rotate through that role. So there'll be 2 elected members on the strategic board, or 3. I don't know if there's other elected members on the enterprise one or the other one. I don't understand where the elected members fit in. If we're taking somebody from this committee onto the executive, and we've already got elected members on the subcommittees who could be a chair, just a bit of clarity.
Yeah, thank you. I understand the point you're making. The key thing here is that elected members have not historically been involved in leader in the lag, but when the Fisheries Local Action Fund came in, which, bear in mind, that was halfway through the last programme of leader, was very much the will of the committee, given the level of council match funding, that elected members should be part of that group. Now, in bringing this all together, the timescale for the Fisheries Local Action Group doesn't start in the same timescale as leader. So what we're simply saying is we bring in the structure that's there already, and in due course that would be reviewed. But it wouldn't be our intentions to seek a member role in the enterprise or leader groups moving forward. It would be at the strategic level, and I think that's a discussion to be had around the Fisheries Local Action Group moving forward as well, in terms of how that sits together.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, any other questions? Ian?
I thought I understood, but I don't know. Is what Ewan's saying is that we'll go from 2 on the Fisheries Local Action Group to 1, and this is what this one will be? Or are you saying the 2 on the subgroup, you could say, is Fisheries Local Action Group plus one other? That's how I understood it, plus one other from this committee, plus a substitute for this one other on the strategic group. Just for clarity on that, please.
I think what we're asking for is 1 member from this committee to be part of the strategic management group, and that the current structure for the Fisheries Local Action Group has 2 members engaged, and that would just carry on. But as part of a review throughout the year, we'll probably come back to members with a view on that.
Okay, members, can we turn to the recommendations on page 149? Are members happy to agree 2.1? Yeah. Okay, and 2.2, 2.3. Okay, we've been asked to nominate an elected member to the committee, plus 1 substitute member. Volunteers, John. Volunteers or nominations?
A suggestion for recommendation that it should be the chair, seeing it's strategic, it should be the chair of this committee, plus the vice chair as the deputy.
Okay. I'll delegate it to the vice chair then, eh? No. Okay, does anybody else? Alistair?
I would suggest Ronnie Ogilvie, chair, if he's prepared to accept the nomination. Oh no, he's a member of the flag at the moment, but I'm talking about a member of this committee, being representative. If you're not thorough to the idea, Chair, I would suggest Ronnie in these circumstances.
Ask Ronnie to comment on it. I mean, it may involve wearing 2 hats, but
yeah, that's why I asked the question. Yeah, because I thought somebody from this committee might be. But I'd rather not take it at the moment. I'll see where the flag goes first. We've got a commitment to the flag to see it through. I think what John suggested might be a way forward.
Okay, so at 2.4, in principle we agree that the chair of the committee and the substitute would be the deputy chair when they're appointed. Okay, and 2.5, we're happy to agree to receive an annual performance report detailing progress. Okay. Oh, Alistair, yeah.
I don't want to make work for the sake of making work, sir, but, you know, an annual report, half-yearly perhaps? Give the committee more of a degree of scrutiny on it? Or is that felt to be unnecessary micromanagement?
Sure, around timing of grants, etc., but I don't know if you wants to.
The leader programme will also be captured in our business plan in terms of performance and progress.
On that basis, sir, I'll withdraw my remarks.
Okay, thanks for that, Ewan. Okay, thank you very much. And
Chair,
thank you
could I just have clarification?
Yeah.
Something you said. We've just appointed a vice chair. When can we expect a vice chair of this committee?
Well, it's up to full council to appoint members.
Is it coming to the next full council?
Well, next full council meeting is on 25th of September, yeah.
Good.
Okay, thanks very much to Nicola and Ewan. Okay, can we turn to item number 12, folks? Okay, this is a report setting out a timetable for the adoption of the remaining supplementary guidance for the LDP. We have to answer any questions, Shona and Steve. And can I ask Alistair? Sorry, my apologies. And can I ask Alistair if there's got anything he wants to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open up to members for questions? Craig?
Sorry, Chair, here I go again. If you turn to page 322 of the paper, and it's a paragraph for the legal agreements. I wonder that we have a response from one of the companies there regarding a legal agreement may be required to appoint a developer's at the developer's expense for the monitoring officer. And the council's response comes under that this monitoring officer is under a voluntary agreement. And I'm just a bit concerned that we're getting the same situation here as we are doing with the wind farms. Because in one state, the respondent is arguing a fact of illegal, but the council's saying voluntary. So I think we need maybe a bit of clarification on that when we're taking this forward, because we certainly don't want to be going back through the same situation regarding the wind farm benefits that we're going through at the moment in this. So I'd just like a wee bit more clarification in that. And then in that same paragraph in the council's response, it says that it's intended that such a role will be put out to tender, and once filled would act for the council as an independent manner. I mean, I'd just like a bit more clarity on that as to if put out to tender. I mean, are the council looking to pay for that? I'd just like a wee bit more information on that, please.
Steve?
Yes, Chair, thank you. This is in connection with requirements around granting consents for wind farm developments, where it would be a requirement that the developer funds a monitoring officer to make sure that progress on the scheme is regularly and accurately recorded and reported. There's, I think, the distinction between this and the discussion around the community benefits is that that is an entirely voluntary process, whereas this is part and parcel of the normal planning process, where this would be a requirement that would be imposed on the granting of the planning consent. With regard to the mechanism for delivering this, it would be funded by the developer, but we would control the situation by actually overseeing the recruitment and appointment of the monitoring body or the monitoring officer.
Yeah.
Yes, please, Chair, thank you. I'm sorry, Steve, but under the council's response, you have the provision of a monitoring officer is under a voluntary agreement and has two elements. You're saying it is legally required, but your response tells to the respondent says that it's a voluntary agreement, not legal agreement. Sorry, for the other members, this is page 322, and the council's response is on page 323, the top of page 323.
It's part of the negotiations around the Section 75 requirements. So the requirements will vary from development to development, depending on the scale of the development and the complexity and so on. So it's not an absolute requirement on every single application. So it is part of a negotiated approach between ourselves and the developers.
I'm still a bit confused with that answer, Chair. I certainly think if we're putting this in supplementary guidance, then we need to make it absolutely clear at to what stage it is voluntary or what stage it is a requirement. That's something that I think, because if we don't, we will end up going through the same process as with the community benefit situation on wind farms. And that certainly, and even with the answers I've had from the officer there, I'm still not understanding of that situation, and I think we need more clarity on that.
Chair, yeah. First of all, just to clarify that the suggested response in terms of making modifications to the draft supplementary guidance, we're suggesting that there shouldn't be any modifications in response to those comments that have been submitted by the industry. Secondly, just if I can just refer back to the actual supplementary guidance and quote the wording so that everybody's clear about what we're saying. Within the supplementary guidance, what it says is for medium and large turbine developments, developers may be expected to enter into a legal agreement in respect of the following, and there's then a list covering the normal things that we negotiate with developers, including things like restoration bonds, requirements to correct interference to TV and radio reception, obligation that developers and or contractors make repairs to public road network, and the appointment at the developer's expense of an independent planning, conditions and monitoring officer and or environmental consultant selected by Dumfries and Galloway Council to assist the council in the monitoring of the site during the construction period and for a period of 3 years following the date upon which the wind energy development becomes fully operational, and to ensure that the development complies with the approved plans, the environmental statement and the conditions attached to the planning permission. So that is actually what it says in the supplementary guidance, and that's what we're suggesting it will still say. We're not proposing any modifications to that at all.
Ian and then Ronnie.
Chairman. I mean, I think it's a wee bit confusing because, sorry, just on Craig's point, it's only because it says council response, but then there's nothing in it. Then it goes to another RES, UK and Ireland Limited. Then proposed modification is no modification proposed. It's kind of explained there. I think that's probably where it's a wee bit confusing, the bottom of page 322. But the council response is nothing in it. If it said none, maybe it would make it a wee bit clearer. I think it's maybe 2 points there. My only point, Chairman, was in regards to paragraph 2.7, the appendix 2, which is contained within the recommendations. I think we should have on the back of that, it's outlining the timetable and how we come forward with it with supplementary planning guidance. It was mentioned that the local development plan, when we went forward to adopt that, it was a political deficit. Members' office or working group hadn't been reinvigorated or restarted. I think we should have either a workshop or something just in regard to the supplementary planning guidance. It's in draft, it's coming forward. So before it comes back in January in particular is what I'm thinking of. Can the members maybe sit around the table, ideally as a collective, but if not, around the groups, Chairman?
A workshop to look at what in particular, the actual items that are coming forward in January, or
I'm thinking
the
that
timetable itself?
No, the items that are coming forward, I think there's 2 or 3 in particular points coming forward. I'm getting lobbied on quite a few of them. It's the January ones I'm getting lobbied on. I want a clear understanding from my own perspective what we're agreeing to. I don't know what a paper the size of this report we've got in front of us today arrive at and try to digest in a week. So just to get an understanding, and at least at that point we can turn around and say, as we have in the past, we've had a political influence over the actual supplementary planning guidance that comes forward. Kind of, it gives us a clear understanding. It was pointed out, we felt that across from all political parties there was a political deficit within the LDP. I think this would eradicate that and help us communicate as we had in the past at certain times.
Okay, we could certainly explore options for that. Steve, do you want to?
Yeah, Chair, I'm quite happy to come and speak to any of the political groups in advance of these items coming forward. The purpose of providing this forward programme, if you like, in terms of the future work programme for supplementary guidance was really to give the committee members a heads up in terms of what is actually going to be coming forward. And you can see that that's spread over a number of committee meetings over the next year or so. And certainly in advance of each of those, I'm more than happy for us when we've got to a position where we actually have the draft of the supplementary guidance to bring that round to the groups. The list that's on today's agenda, I appreciate that is a lengthy list, but these are all supplementary guidance which in draft form previously have been through committee, and what we're doing now is just bringing them back with the outcome of those public consultation processes on the back of the anticipated adoption imminently of the new local development plan. With regard to the LDP and the kind of governance arrangements around that in the future, I'm certainly proposing to bring forward proposals and options in that regard next year to committee to consider as part of how we set up the programme for LDP2 effectively, and how do we make sure that we put in place governance arrangements that secures that member engagement and member involvement, which I think all members will be aware that I'm a very strong advocate of that, and I'm very keen for us to find an effective way of doing that.
Okay, Ronnie and then Craig.
Thanks, Chair. And I'm avoiding being parochial because it's actually in the recommendations. 2.4, which is quite self-explanatory. Then if you go to the 315, gives an explanation. But I always thought that because it was in the local development plan, which had a bit more status, and I'm just curious about the status. The other point I wanted to, I don't know if it's a mistake, if you go on the next page, which is 263, I look at the non-statutory supplementary guidance titles, and it has Annan Regeneration Master Plan as a new one. I always thought that we agreed that 2 years ago, or maybe more. So it's not a new one. It was one of the first ones to be endorsed by the PH&E or whatever it was called, FES. So I just don't understand why it's classed as a new one there. So just to go back to 315, I'm trying to establish the status of that in planning terms or steering developer.
The distinction is essentially that statutory supplementary guidance forms part of the local development plan and is given the same status in determining planning applications. Non-statutory planning guidance doesn't form part of the LDP and therefore has the status of being a material consideration. What that means is that it can be taken into account in determining planning applications, but it doesn't have the same status as being within the plan. Sorry, what was the second point?
Chair, clarification in page 263. It's got the Annan Regeneration Master Plan. Well, the master plan came through FES several years ago and was in. Everybody thought it was one of the best ways to go, and it's down here as a new one. I thought it had been an established one.
My recollection is it came through FES where the master plan was agreed, but it wasn't actually agreed as supplementary guidance. So this is the first time that we're considering adopting it as a form of supplementary guidance. So it's just it doesn't mean that the master plan's not new.
Doesn't change the plan, just puts it as part of supplementary guidance. Okay, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. On page 352 at the very appendix 2 at the very back of the document, it's just regarding the timescale for preparing following supplementary guidances. And under there's the water supply constraints at Gretna. I mean, I'm just sort of concerned or asking as to how this will affect the current identified sites in progressing through the planning process that have already been identified within the new LDP. And if we haven't got the supplementary guidance in place now, and there's no timescale for it as yet, what sort of effect will that have in taking these sites forward? And I'm bringing this up, Chair, because pre-recession, when the boom, as it was at the time, was on, Gretna was constrained by the water supply then, and Gretna did not boom because of that fact. And I appreciate Council and that we made negotiations with Scottish Water to try and take that provision forward. But that provision has now come to basically an end, and with the proposed new development plan coming out, etc., a delay in this particular supplementary guidance may have a big effect again on the development of that whole area. And I'm just sort of wanting to see what Steve's points on that as to how it will affect them sites coming through the planning process.
Chair, this one is essentially an update on the situation in Gretna. As you'll be aware, we have an existing supplementary guidance dealing with the issues around water infrastructure constraints in Gretna, requiring the council and developers to invest in, along with Scottish Water, upgrading the local pipework. We're in a situation now where the first phase of that investment programme has actually been undertaken by Scottish Water, and what we're now doing is in a process of discussions with Scottish Water around their detailed proposals for the next phase. And once we understand what those are, that will be incorporated into this updated supplementary guidance. The reason we haven't been able to put a time frame on it is that to some extent we're in Scottish Water's hands to develop their proposals and bring them forward. However, we have had recent, very senior level meetings with Scottish Water at which this featured on the agenda. So there is an awareness within Scottish Water of the need to take this forward. I don't see it, just to kind of answer your direct question, is this going to act as a constraint or a barrier? I don't believe that it is. We've got something in the order of 50 connections which are already available in the immediate short term. And we've also flagged up to Scottish Water the fact that we've got the new allocations within the LDP, so they're very well aware of those and are working up their proposals to take account of those. Okay.
Ian?
I suppose just in the back, because I've asked that question numerous occasions, whether it's Gretna, whether it's Allen, whether it's Stranraer, whether it's Dumfries, and I've asked Scottish Water as well, but in the local development plan, how much does that actually influence their capital programme? I suppose that's, maybe it's out of your remit, maybe apologise for asking that if it is, Steve, but it's something I've brought up many times. Again, kind of look at it, they're a statutory consultee, we do consult with them. Gretna is Craig's absolutely right, and he obviously is a local member, so he knows it first hand. But Gretna's been constrained for about 20 years, I think, with water connections, drinking water. Sewage was constrained as well, but across Dumfries and Galloway, so the local development plan, how does that actually influence, what we are agreeing here today, how does it actually influence their capital works?
I mean, obviously, Scottish Water themselves can only answer that question, but I would like to think that we do influence their capital planning process, and that's why we engage with them as a key agency early on in the LDP process. And one of the issues that we've recently flagged up at senior level to Scottish Water is that we would like to see that engagement being a lot more wide-ranging. At the moment, they tend to reserve the right to comment on our LDP allocations in fairly minimal terms, I think it has to be said. But what we're looking for from them in future is a much more positive engagement, first of all, to help very early on in the process identify potential constraints, but then to move on to start thinking about, well, what are the possibilities of those constraints being removed or addressed during the time frame of the plan.
Thanks, Chairman. Very, very constructive answer. I think it's good to hear that Scottish Water are finally waking up to the constraints within Dumfries and Galloway.
Indeed. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, members, can we turn to the recommendations? Okay, if we look at 2.1, we've obviously considered the comments. Are members happy to agree the Council's recommended response and any modifications in Appendix 1? Yep. Okay. 2.2, happy to agree to delegate authority ahead of planning to make the change. Yep. Okay. 2.3, happy to agree. 2.4, happy to agree. Okay. 2.5. 2.6, and happy to note 2.7. Okay, thank you very much. Folks. Okay, can we turn to item number 13? Okay, folks, item number 13 is an implementation update on Flood Risk Management Scotland Act 2009. We've got James MacLeod and Brian Templeton to answer any members' questions. Can I ask Alistair, first of all, is there anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open up to members for any questions on the report? Okay, first of all, Jim.
Page 361 starts off with the different objectives for managing flood risk. Is that in order of the work will be carried out, or is that just simply listing them? On page 356, can you maybe explain in more detail, James, about the 2016-2021 cycle and 2022-2027, because some of the areas here are identified but weren't identified in time to be signed off according to the paper by the Scottish Government to be dealt with before 2022. And I think the last thing, it's not for us to deal with, and it's certainly not for today, but I've spoken to tenants in Kirkconnell who have had an opportunity explained to them to protect their properties and they're in a social landlord's estate. The work's not being carried out, and they're not concerned that a year has gone by. The likelihood of flooding is increasing with the time of the year, and social landlord didn't seem to have responded to concerns. And I know that's not for us today, but it's maybe something we could pass on, saying that, you know, if there are areas, properties that are flooded, and the social landlord identifies a means of preventing the same occurrence, and they'll actually do it, it doesn't give tenants much confidence in their landlord.
Okay, I'll just pick up on your first point, your list that you stated on page 361. That's a list of the objectives which has been agreed with SEPA, ourselves, and our consultant RPAPS. This is a sort of rough guide for each PVA, what we have sort of looked at, which is then produced a short list, which is the Appendix 4.
Will it be done in order, or is that just simply a listing of the ones we're going to do?
No, that's just a sort of list of what's getting looked at. Appendix 4 is our current short list. Our next step now will be to move on to get this short list sort of smartened up, and to do that we'll look at cost benefit. But so again, that's just sort of one big list. Your second point about the sort of time scales is our first cycle will be looking at things due on the short list, and then things that we can't meet then might go to cycle 2, sort of cycle 3. Again, it'll all go down to cost. When and where these things can get done.
And are you saying we'll not do anything until 2016, which is the first cycle, 2016 to 2021?
Our first cycle then is when our local flood risk management plans get published, and that will set out what sort of short list of duties that we'll look to do.
And apart from strategic elements, are we going to be supporting owner-occupiers to carry out some works on their own properties?
Yes, we currently have our flood product scheme, which we've been running now for a good few years, and that's now open to members of the public for us to go out and for them to protect their own property. You did raise up a sort of third point about properties at Kirkconnell, which I think James is going to cover.
Thanks for that, aye.
Just picking up on that briefly, Jim, I've
got some discussions ongoing with the registered social landlord with regard to those properties up there. I'm due to meet with them in the near future to discuss that, and that'll be I'll bring up that particular issue as well.
Thanks for that, James.
Okay, Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. I particularly like recommendation 2.2, sir, which says that provisionally agree the short list of measures for the 23 PVAs. Obviously, that's set out in Appendix 4, but subject to the proviso that all members' views will be sought through the area committee framework. I think it's essential, in fact, that is done to ensure, in fact, that it's not only the 19 members of this committee that take ownership of these, but all 47 members of the council. As I say, I think that's a particularly helpful suggestion and a good process to adopt.
Any other members? Okay, can we turn to the recommendations, or is that a...
I was going to say that the next recommendation is to guarantee a high pressure above us. That would help with the flood prevention.
Fair enough, Ronnie. Okay, can we turn to the recommendations? And first of all, 2.1. Members happy to note? Okay, and to agree 2.2, note 2.3, and note 2.4. Okay, can I thank everyone for your attendance today? I don't have any further business. Thank you very much.